All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to Foster My Stories podcast, season 16, episode 62. I'm your host, Shalina Michelle Tate. And on today's cast episode, I'm super excited because this is the Relate to You segment of the podcast where I cover movies or short films, basically content that relates to you as a foster care community, adoption, orphan, or underserved. And by the way, as I say all the time, you don't have to have grown up in those scenarios to enjoy the content. And once again, this podcast focuses on achievement focused content to counter the stereotypes and statistics and the status quo associated with these communities. And I'm hoping you are enjoying the content. If you're new here, welcome. And let's dive in on today's cast episode. I will be covering two cat movies and a public figure, a poet who relates to the orphan community in some aspect. Now, the content is just a hint at this community. The movies don't really touch on the subject matter as a whole movie, but it does speak briefly about these scenarios. And so I just want to touch on that. So let's dive in. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm super excited to have you here today with me on Fostered My Stories, Season 16, Episode 62. Let's dive in. So, the first movie I would like to talk about has kind of been out for a while in movie theaters, and yeah, it's called Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. If you've ever seen any of the Shrek movies, this is where this movie kind of piggybacks off of, or kind of extends from, kind of like a sister movie, if you want to call it. But Puss in Boots already had his own standalone movie a couple years back, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is the follow up to that movie. And the way it's looking, it may be some more Shrek movies that's on the way. So stay tuned for that. If you're like me and have seen them, then you know the aesthetic and how this franchise has really done well over the years. So let's dive in. I want to make sure you can see the screen, of course. All right, so here I am getting this content on the IMDb page if you want to check that out for yourself. But Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, when Puss in Boots, this character right here, discovers that his passion for adventure has taken its toll and he has burned through 8 of his 9 lives, he launches an epic journey to restore them by finding the mythical last wish. So, yes, that's what this movie is about. I've seen this movie a few times. I love how graphics has come a long way. And so, this is what this is. Yeah, so I wanted to touch on this movie. And like I said, this movie doesn't cover the orphan storyline as a whole. Like the whole movie is not about that, but it touches on it, right? And so I'm wanting to I just want to kind of hint at that. So earlier in this, I guess, trailer, I'm trying to see, can I pause it? It may not let me pause it. Yeah, I can't pause it. But oh yeah, I can. Let's see. And I think I can rewind it. Awesome. All right, let me see. Can I? All right, play. And once again, this content is uh, on IMDb. To for yourself. Boom. All right, let's stop right there. All right, so this is Goldie from Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and I really like how this movie kind of touched on her kind of like backstory in a way, but it didn't go in too deep. So if you know the story of Goldie Bear and Goldilocks and the Three Bears, you know that she stumbled in their house and she ate the porridge, and she had to find the right bed, she had to find the right porridge, and basically that's what the story is. And so I like how this movie kind of gives her like a little backstory, and that's what it hints at. It hints at her the fact that she's an orphan, and there's a lesson in this movie. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. This movie is, let's see, rated PG. I would say this movie probably needs to be PG-13 because there's some themes in there that might be a little scary for little ones or whatnot, especially the big bad wolf character. But yeah, without giving the movie away, that may be kind of scary for some little kids. So I say PG-13. But anyway, it kind of briefly touches on her storyline, and I love the lesson behind just kind of like, without giving it away, kind of valuing what you have. I'll leave that there. But if you have not seen this movie, I would go check it out. Once again, this is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and he has a standalone movie. If you haven't seen it, go check that out. It's the same type of humor you find in Shrek. If you've ever seen any of those movies as well. All right, and so this is the first of um, two cat movies that has touched on, hinted at this orphan theme. And once again, on this podcast, I like to highlight the achievement focused content related to the foster, adoption, orphan, and underserved communities. I know a lot of times those communities get a bad rap for being in their circumstances and situations. For those of you who don't know, I'm your host, Shalina Michelle Tate. I grew up in the South Carolina foster care system, 17 years, and now I'm on a journey. Aside from being an author, I am a content creator. I am developing some things, some brands that I'm super excited to kind of include you in, the listeners and the audience. But yeah, so these communities often get a bad rap, but I like to kind of counter that with my content and kind of show you, hey, it's okay if that's your past. It's okay if that's your current circumstance, and it's okay that you can have hope for the future if you know. So let's dive into who's in this movie, right? So Antonio Banderas, I love his accent. He is a veteran actor, phenomenal actor. He's been in those movies, the Spy Kids movies, kind of old school movie, but it's really cool. If you have little ones, I'll check out the Spy Kids. He plays the father in those movies. Also stars Selma Hayek. She is a phenomenal actress as well. She's a veteran actor as well, and she's played in a lot of other movies as well. Her character, Kitty Softpaws, I love the name. I love how they kind of you know kind of get a little bit more into her storyline, and then what happened with Puss as far as what happened with the last movie. So also in this movie, it does kind of does extend the orphan storyline just a bit more. We're introduced to Perito, this little dog right here, who is the comic relief, if you want to call it, in the movie. I mean, the movie is funny as a whole, regardless. Like, it's a lot of funny moments, but Perito comes along, he meets them, gets to go on a journey with them, and he also has his own type of um, orphan-esque storyline. And once again, they rated this PG, but I think it needs to be PG-13 because just some stuff in there, a parent could be like, what? But it's not bad enough where your kid can't watch. But with anything I recommend if you're a parent, if you're a guardian or a mentor or advocate, watch the content first, review the content first, and then use your own personal judgment if you're wanting to share it with a youth or someone you know. That's what I recommend. All right, but Perito, he has his own type of orphan-esque storyline, and once again, and then they kind of go into it with Goldie. This is Goldie from Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So, without going into more into the movie, go see it. I really liked it. I loved how the graphics have gotten updated tremendously. It's just, I remember when stuff was cartoons and you could see the pencil lines of the drawings like Bugs Bunny, and now we're here. This is awesome. All right. Like I said, Selma Hayek is Kitty Softpaws. Antonio Banderas. He is the star of this movie. And look at that, nominated for 1 Oscar, 1 win, 51 nominations total. I'm not surprised. The movie was phenomenal for the graphics, for the acting, for just the storyline as a whole, for just the sense of you just felt like you was right there in the movie with them. Okay, so let's continue, right? So this is the first of 2 cat movies, which is kind of funny to me, but I realized, wait a minute, both of them kind of touch on that kind of briefly though. So the second movie I would like to highlight, which is a cat movie, happens to be a cat movie as well, that kind of came out like literally a couple weeks after Puss in Boots, is the Amazing Maurice. This is the Amazing Maurice right here. Let's see, give me a moment. Yeah, so the Amazing Maurice, I think we should be fine to check out that trailer here. I know on YouTube it's kind of iffy, you know, I don't want to get a strike or anything. So I'm going to share the trailer with you because this may not be as known as Puss in Boots. I guess it depends on where you live. You know, I really liked it. I saw this movie recently. Also, graphics are beautiful. I loved how it just kind of like played on its own, you know, storyline. I made a book and that turned into a film. And so, yeah. So let's see, can I do the same thing, except this time I want to, Puss in Boots is more so known, I guess, everywhere, whereas The Amazing Maurice, it was an adaptation from a book that I'm not too familiar with. So, yeah, but I did watch it. I really watched it because I saw the previews, the trailer, and I was like, okay, definitely want to go check that out. And then to my surprise, they kind of hinted at an Orphan Storyline. So I was like, okay, cool. So give me a moment. Let me see if it'll let me do that here. Okay, it will. So I'm going to play this trailer for you, and it's here. Once again, I'm on imdb.com, so if you definitely want to check it out further, some more information about this, feel free to go here. And before I get into the trailer, I'll play the trailer for you. It stars Hugh Laurie, and Hugh Laurie is his character. He plays Maurice. So Hugh Laurie is the if you want to call it the very, some people may call him narcissistic, but he's a very kind of like rude, not really rude. I don't know. I kind of really don't have a word for him. He was the doctor who walked with a limp and a cane in this show called House. It's like a medical show. It was out a couple years ago or whatnot. I'm not sure. I think they rebooted it. Don't quote me on that. But that's where he's from. He played that doctor who was like very sarcastic. That's the word I want to say. Very sarcastic to like everyone. I'm thinking about episodes right now. I'm thinking about him. Everyone who talked to him, it's like he basically had a smart remark for everything. So yeah, very sarcastic character or whatnot. But he's very talented. He's also a veteran actor, if you want to call him. Played in a lot of other stuff, of course, besides this. And yeah, so let's get into this trailer. I'm going to play it. I should be fine. And let me see. I'm going to just press play.
Original fairy tales are all the same. Princess story. It's a little different.
I am the Amazing Maurice.
That cat can talk.
Well, of course. Many of us can. All right, go, go, go.
So what am I in your story?
You're not handsome enough to be the love interest. Then you're not funny enough for comic relief. Right. I'm off to get my adventure bag. Let's go.
I think I love her. Looks like a town with opportunities.
It's all quiet.
There aren't any local rats here.
It smells, doesn't it?
Smells like
a mystery.
There has to be a clue that would advance the plot.
The world doesn't have a plot. Things just happen. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. It landed on my head.
You won't believe what we found.
It's a deadly evil.
Ominous.
Don't worry, a cat always lands on its feet. Ah, Maurice! Amazing, Maurice. You have to fight it! Come to me!
What? You'll have to find out the rest yourself. The amazing Maurice. It's really not your average fairy tale.
Important safety tip. Need a dead rat that just ate something, that made it dead.
Okay.
What is everyone writing to
I
him?
was trying to it's called this. There we go. All right. So once again, it's called The Amazing Maurice. I did watch it. It was pretty cool. And this says it's the story that follows Maurice, a goofy, streetwise cat who has a perfect money-making scam. He finds it says here, dumb-looking kid who plays a pipe and has his very own horde of rats who are strangely illiterate. So they kind of play on the Piper storyline there. And this character, Keith, let me go back to him. Let me see, can I get this guy right here with the purple hoodie on? That's Keith. It plays on his storyline briefly of being an orphan. And the reason why I'm touching on both of these movies as it relates to the orphan storyline is because, and of course, your circumstance is what you make it, right? So in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, they kind of play on and once again, this is not the whole movie. It's just they discuss it within the movie. So with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, like I said, I love how they went into the Goldilocks storyline, her backstory, just kind of briefly. They didn't go the whole movie with it. But the lesson there, I'm going to say this, the lesson there was to value what you have. Whereas in The Amazing Maurice, it kind of shows like because of his backstory and his circumstance, he makes some choices that may not always be the right choice. So it's situational choices because he is an orphan. With Goldilocks and Puss in Boots: The Final Wish is like, she has support. It may not be the support that she really, really wants, but she has a support system. So that's the value what you have aspect. Once again, these two movies, not related, of course, but I just caught how they both use the fairy tale storyline. Puss in Boots is not a traditional, well, it's a fairy tale playing off of Shrek, which is not a traditional fairy tale, whereas The Amazing Maurice is like almost a fairy tale as well, but not in a traditional stance. So I like how both of those movies are like that as well. I also like how they're both orange cats. You know what? And they both almost similarly, their storylines is getting into stuff. In the Puss in Boots, he goes around and he fights, but he fights to for the people and to almost like a Robin Hood, if you want to call him. Wasn't always that way, right? He was like the thief, so the bad guy. Whereas The Amazing Maurice is like he does it for survival purposes. Once again, The Amazing Maurice, I would check that out. It's also rated PG, and like I said, I feel both of these movies need to be PG-13, only because, okay, so in The Amazing Maurice, now I was saying in Puss in Boots how the quote-unquote bad guy in the movie for Puss in Boots, for a very little kid could be very scary character. I mean, but he plays it well. He does a phenomenal job. Whereas here in The Amazing Maurice, there's a bad guy as well. But both have their own story, lessons behind them, if I want to go into it. So in The Amazing Maurice, the bad guy ends up being something because of a unified effort. And the unified effort to do bad is like when you kind of like when you put your mind to something, you can do it, whether it's something good or whether it's something bad, that storyline. Whereas the Puss in Boots movie, it reflects on, you know, hey, I'm here for you to make some decisions, and your decisions is depending on what happens next. So, two different movies, but I love the lessons in both of the movies, the storylines in both of the movies. And once again, I feel like both movies need to be rated PG-13, not PG. Um, and both happen to be orange cats who talks. Okay. I don't know. But and both play on a fairy tale basis, and both have a hint of a orphan storyline without going into this is the whole movie. And once again, I always say this, my podcast and anything I do, I know that being associated with those communities, foster, adopted, orphan, underserved, is not always seen in a positive light. A lot of times, society will put you at the Amazing Maurice because you were an orphan or in foster care. Then you're going to end up on the streets and being a thief and getting into trouble, which is definitely unfair. But that's why I like to counter statistics, because statistics will tell you, oh, because you grew up in an underserved situation or maybe a single parent home, you can only do this, this, and this, which is, as we know, not true, right? There's so many people who have overcome the odds regardless of their situations. I feel the Amazing Maurice and both Puss in Boots does the same thing. The Goldilocks storyline, I feel, is a phenomenal example of that, despite her situation. And I really loved how they kind of like zoomed in on that a little bit more. And then with the Amazing Maurice, yeah, it was lessons to be learned, even towards the end. So yeah, I would check out both movies. Once again, if you are a parent, a guardian, foster adopted, educator, I would check this content out first for both movies, because you may have little ones that's, if they're very scary, and once again, I watched both of these movies a couple times. I'm a big kid like that, so I don't know. I love them. I love them for the aesthetic. I love them, just for what they, the lessons that I felt that they were trying to portray, and that at least from what I took from it, let's say it that way. All right, so let's continue. Right, we covered Puss in Boots, The Final Wish, or The Last Wish, excuse me, and The Amazing Maurice. Two cat movies that hint at or touch on the orphan storyline. Once again, this is Foster My Stories podcast, the achievement focused podcast for the foster, adoption, orphan, and underserved communities. So, despite statistics, the status quo, and anything else that may come out the woodwork, we try to focus on the achievement aspect of what individuals associated with these communities can become. Okay. All right. And to continue the orphan-esque storyline, now I want to touch on a poet who is the Relate to You, this month's Relate to You public figure of the month. So in the Relate to You segment of the Foster My Stories podcast, I usually cover like a movie. In this case, I covered two. A public figure, and they could be any type of public figure. That could be a local public figure, or someone from the past, or someone from, that's doing strides in a major way, and then also books and just different things like that relates to you, foster, adoption, orphan, underserved, plus, and I say plus because you don't have to have gone through any of that to hopefully enjoy this content, right? All right, so the poet I would like to get into, he was in a kinship care type situation, and then it later turned into an orphan, almost like a brief moment, an orphan type situation. So he was with family. So that's kinship care. For those of you who don't know, kinship care is what a lot of individuals endure in the underserved communities, where a lot of times a youth may be raised by their grandparent, right? Now the foster care system honors that as something called kinship care, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be the grandparent to qualify. You could be an aunt, a cousin, um, someone related to the youth that may be removed. Let's say it that way, and you can actually step up and step in to be that provider. Now, and of course, you would have to get with your local agency in your state to figure out what the rules and regulations in relation to that. Because just like with foster care and adoption, there's a process. They have to review you. They have to review your home. So it is a process. They have to make sure you'll be the best fit for the youth despite the situation. A lot of people feel like, oh well, I'm the aunt, so the kid should just come with me. It's still a process because they want to make sure you're the best fit, if that makes sense. So now the system honors or recognizes those of you who may be out here as a grandparent or an aunt or uncle raising your siblings. It's something called kinship care, and I can't stress this enough. Of course, nobody's situation is ever asked for, right? Nobody's ever asked to be put in these situations, whether it's foster, adoption, orphan, underserved. Life happens as it does, right? And so if you are thinking about becoming a foster parent, or taking in an orphan, or doing kinship care, or helping someone from the underserved, I just implore you to really make sure you're doing it from your heart, because these youth know the difference between, oh, this is a tax write-off, or this is not enough money from the agency. They know the difference. That's what I'm trying to express. For somebody who genuinely wants to help, and for somebody who's just doing this to keep up with appearances. Oh, you gave to that local charity last year. You're the best person in the world, and then the kid gets in your home and you're a nightmare. And I'm going off on a little tangent, right? Because I've been in those situations before, but not to that extreme. I'm just saying. In other words, be the change you want to see for the youth you want to help. Be the change you want to see for the youth you want to help, genuinely. Okay. All right. But let's continue to get into it. Langston Hughes is the public figure of February that I would love to highlight for you. Phenomenal poet. If you've never heard that name, look him up. His name is Langston Hughes, a unique name, Langston. You may know somebody named Langston, I'm not sure, but Langston. Learned about him in English class. It's pretty cool. I will say this, even though we had to take English in school, I loved when I got to learn about different poets and just different people influential. And of course, let me express this as well. I know I'm not your average person. I know February is Black History Month, but I'm going to express to you right now, I celebrate Black 365, just like Mr. Tom Joyner. Okay, let me just express that. I had to say that. I celebrate Black 365. Okay, let's continue. So Langston Hughes, one of the dynamic poets I learned about when I was doing English and whatnot. It has phenomenal stuff. And of course, as you can see here, 1902 to 1967 or whatnot. So he's passed, of course. But I want to definitely get into his biography. I'm going to read it to you. And once again, I'm not reading this to highlight on, just race. But he did, that was the premise of his work, and a lot of what he did in his poetry, he basically wanted to portray real life and from where he came from, and then also his circumstance, kinship care, briefly an orphan. So, and then I guess going with family could also be foster care as well. even though it's kinship. So let's get into Mr. Langston Hughes. Once again, I love his work. I love his work. Okay, let's get into it. So, Mr. Langston Hughes, a phenomenal poet. If you've never heard of Langston Hughes, if you don't know who I'm talking about, please look him up. Once again, his content is here also on imdb.com. And phenomenal, especially if you're a writer or you like poetry, look him up. He's somebody to study, and of course there's a lot of poets out here. And I was just reflecting on poetry and poets, how amazing how all of us are kind of connected, whether you're an author, you're telling a story, whether you're a graphic designer, you're telling a story, whether you're a dancer or a singer, whatever your giftings and your talents and your gifts are, your purpose. That's why I would say find your purpose. You're telling a story despite circumstances, despite your situation, despite life. You're telling a story. Mr. Langston Hughes, he told stories of his life at the time. Like I said, he 1902 to 1967. He grew up in those times where he went through the ringer, and so he, in order to express himself, he did it through poetry. Phenomenal. If you get a chance to read any of his content. All right, I'm going to go into his bio. And once again, you can follow along with what I'm reading on imdb.com, Langston Hughes. Let's get into it. Langston Hughes, the son of teacher Carrie Langston and James Nathaniel Hughes, James Mercer Langston Hughes was born in Joplin, Missouri. His father abandoned the family and left for Cuba, then Mexico, due to enduring racism in the United States. Young Langston was left to be raised by his grandmother, that's that kinship care I talked about earlier, in Lawrence, Kansas. After her death, he went to live with family and friends. So after her death, that's the brief orphan situation I was talking about, going to live with more family. That could be considered also a foster care situation. Still kinship, but foster. Due to an unstable early life, his childhood was not a happy one, but it heavily influenced the poet he would become. That's amazing. I'm going to pause right there. Despite your circumstances, your past in life, you can, despite all of that, go on to do phenomenal things. You just have to, from my experience, surround yourself by positive people. You have to probably shift your atmosphere. You have to get in a mindset of, despite statistics and status quo and all this other stuff, you have to find a way to find your footing. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. All right. So later he lived again with his mother, who had remarried in Lincoln, Illinois, and eventually in Cleveland, Ohio. During high school, he wrote for the school newspaper, edited the yearbook, and began to write short stories, poetry, and dramatic plays. This man is phenomenal. Once again, if you do not know who Langston Hughes is, please look him up. Okay. His first piece of jazz poetry was When Sue Wears Red. It was written during his high school years. Hughes was influenced by American poets Paul Laurence Dunbar, Carl Sandburg, and Walt Whitman. He also briefly lived in Mexico with his father, who did not support his son's desire to become a writer. Langston studied engineering at Columbia University for a year from 1921 to 22, eventually leaving because of racial prejudice at the school, as well as his growing desire to return to Harlem and write poetry. All right, and so Hughes worked various odd jobs, including a brief tenure as a crewman aboard the SS Malone in 1923, spending 6 months traveling to West Africa and Europe. In Europe, he stayed for a while in Paris, becoming part of the Black American expatriate community. In November of 1924, he returned to the U.S. to live with his mother in Washington, D.C. While working as a busboy at a restaurant, Hughes tucked a few of his poems under the dinner plate of then reigning poet, Vachel Lindsay. Lindsay shared the poems with his reading that night, and in the morning, Hughes was crowned Lindsay's new discovery, the busboy poet. That's amazing. That's what I call being at the right place at the right time. Being at the right place at the right time. Man, the following year, Hughes enrolled at the historically black Lincoln University, where he became a member of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity and befriended classmate Thurgood Marshall, which is amazing. Hughes received his BA in 1929 and a lit degree in 1943, except for travels to the Caribbean and West Indies. Harlem was Hughes' primary home for the rest of his life, and I want to get into the rest of this. Hughes achieved fame as a literary luminary during the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. In 1930, his first novel, Not Without Laughter, won the Harlem Gold Medal for Literature. Hughes was particularly known for his insightful, colorful plays of Black life in America from the 1920s through the 1960s. His work was known for his engagement with the world of jazz and the influence it had on his writing, as in Montage of a Dream Deferred. His life and work were enormously important in shaping the artistic contributions of the Harlem Renaissance. Unlike other notable Black poets of the period, Hughes refused to differentiate between his personal experiences and the common experience of Black America. He told stories of people in ways that reflected their actual culture, including their suffering and their love of music, laughter, and language itself, in addition to leaving us a large body of poetic work as he did. Hughes wrote 11 plays and countless works of prose, including the well-known Simple books. Simple speaks his mind. Simple stakes a claim. Simple takes a wife, and Simple Uncle Sam. He edited numerous poetry anthologies, wrote an acclaimed autobiography, The Big C, and co-wrote the play Mule Bone with Zora Neale Hurston, another great. In 1967, Hughes died from complications following abdominal surgery related to prostate cancer at the age of 65. His ashes are okay. All right, you can read the rest of it. Okay. All right. So but his floor where he's buried, the design floor, reads, "My soul has grown deep like the rivers." Yeah. So Langston Hughes, phenomenal poet, and I just wanted to kind of like touch on him to encourage those of you who are aspiring poets, musicians, writers. I know the arts doesn't really get positive support, especially from parents and relatives, because it's not really seen as a real career. And what is really a real career, if I want to ask that question, right? A lot of times you may have a youth who draws all day, and you just see it as like wasting time. You may have a youth that's like Langston Hughes, always writing poetry, and you figure it's wasting time. They need to get in a book, but a lot of times that's the way they express themselves. And once again, it's not to condone getting into trouble or anything like that, nothing like that. But what I'm expressing is, if you know someone, a youth in particular, and you basically see that they are doing these things like writing like poetry or music or dancing all the time, it's not because they're trying to be disruptive or wasteful. It could be a lot, let's say it that way. It is a lot to just ask a youth to just be in school from age 7 to 18, and be attentive, and once again, it's not to condone like being disruptive or anything like that, none of that. But what I'm saying is, a lot of youth are hands-on. A lot of youth are like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston. A lot of them, they express themselves through the arts, which I don't feel needs to continuously be muffled Because if you just went to school and just had straight academics, I wonder how many youth would, progress. And it's nothing against academics, don't get me wrong. I just think the system needs to be tighter with that, you know, really zone in on, pairing what the youth is gifted in. Okay, I'm kind of getting into my resume a little bit and my blueprints and stuff. Okay, let me continue. I could go off on things. All right, so Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes is February's Relate to You public figure of the month. And speaking of his poetry, let's get into one of his poetries, right? Mr. Langston Hughes, phenomenal, right? He did a poetry of mother to son. You can find this on poetryfoundation.org. Poetryfoundation.org. His poetry, Mother to Son. Let me read it for you. Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Well, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the times I've been climbing on and reaching landings, turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So, boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps because you find it kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I still climbing on. I still going, honey. I still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. So that was Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. And yeah, I like to get in character. So phenomenal poet. And basically the lesson in that is just this mother's telling her son that you're going to go through some things in life. She's reflecting on everything she's been through. I can imagine about places with no carpet on the floor, having and then being in the dark. And she had to fight for survival. Probably had to run a lot of places. Probably had to kind of scrub some floors based off the time frame it was, and do a lot of things that would be considered degrading, only to be the mother to tell her son to keep pushing and keep fighting. Man, Langston Hughes, phenomenal. Speaking of phenomenal, go check out Zora Neale Hurston and Nikki Giovanni, and then you'll find out what it means to be a phenomenal woman. Okay, well, that poet. Let's continue, right? So Langston Hughes, that was Mother to Son on the poetryfoundation.org, and that was the poetry from Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. And of course, he got a lot of other works. Go check out his stage plays. Phenomenal writer. I feel Lin-Manuel Miranda is definitely a poet. I probably butchered his name. I hope I didn't. But Hamilton is poetry. If you've ever seen the Broadway musical Hamilton, that's the definition of poetry. It doesn't look the way everything else is look. It doesn't sound the way the traditional way of how everything or probably should sound, or how people think stuff should sound or be. But it is what it is in a retelling way, in a dynamic way. I wonder if somebody's done a movie on his life. I don't know. I need to look that up. Once again, your public figure of the month was Langston Hughes, and I just kind of read Mother to Son by Langston Hughes, and just, yeah, I could put myself in this stuff all day. But that was your public figure of the month. And speaking of poetry, once again, if you have a poet that you want to gift some encouragement to, I highly suggest, and I kind of said her a couple of times last year and the year before, but this year I'm saying her again, Miss Nadine Johnson. This is Nadine Johnson's books.com. I Write Rhymes novel. I highly recommend you give this to a young poet that you know for encouragement. Now, let's get into what this book is about, because, the storyline as well does kind of touch on some stuff, but it's all for encouragement to kind of find your footing You may go through things, but find that footing, find your perfect purpose, find your gift to help you progress. And I write rhymes, and the reason why I'm highlighting this again is it's Nadine Johnson. Her I Write Rhymes book was selected as 2022 Bocas Literary Festival Children's Book Prize finalist. That's amazing. And if you want to kind of read more on that, feel free to come to her website, NadineJohnsonsBooks.com, or 123 Mango Tree. I love the name of her email, 123 Mango Tree, and it will turn into NadineJohnsonsBooks.com, and you click on here to read more about that, being a children's book prize finalist. And like I said, she does a lot of other children's books or whatnot. She's a children's book author, and she's a educator as well. Phenomenal, just gifted individual. And so let's get into what I Write Rhymes is about, right? So I Write Rhymes is a contemporary middle school or middle grade novel with dynamic poetry throughout. It tackles the heavy topic of race in America, but it's written to be easily digestible for middle school or those in middle school. Readers will root for the main character. His name is Moses, imagine, who is hilarious, quirky, and an impressive poet. After reading the book, readers will feel hopeful, not heavy. And so let me pause right there, because I know there's a lot of people that says not everything is about race. And of course, on Foster My Stories, I don't go into all of that like that. And I'm not going into this because this is February once again. Like I said a little earlier, I celebrate Black 365 like Mr. Tom Joyner. But for the purposes of I Write Rhymes, I do have to point out the truthfulness that this is a real issue still, and especially for youth in schools. Like, you would be surprised at the young Black males who endure racism, and not just the males or females, but what am I saying? It's still prevalent. Whether in school, whether on the workforce, in jobs. It's sad, but it's still there. And especially when it hits a youth, it could be it could trigger some things of how they respond and how they handle the situation, which may not always be in the best way. So mentors, advocates, parents, if that subject ever comes up for you and your family, don't hide from it or brush it to the side. I would have a real discussion about that. And then also talking about finding healthy ways to just be able to deal with it if it comes up, because some people, will retaliate. Not everybody has the walk away, and leave it alone, results that most people desire for them to do. Some people have been taught all their lives, fight for what you have, and sometimes they will take that both literally and emotionally, and they may not always handle the situation in the best way. And so this book wants to encourage a any youth you want to gift this to. Once again, I'm on NadineJohnsonsBooks.com, or you could get there by typing in 123mangotree.com and really just diving into that book, giving that to somebody you know. So this is a critical book to share with middle graders. She called them middle graders. I like that, of different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. So yes, readers will be able to relate to the band of characters who makes this story enjoyable and thought-provoking. I Write Rhymes will help to initiate discussions with students about race and the bias that exists in our society. And once again, I definitely would have this discussion with the parents in the room or the advocates in the room. Like, if you're a teacher, what I'm saying is, if you're a teacher, don't have this conversation with a student by yourself with the student, if that makes sense. And I really shouldn't have to say that, but there's been situations I would have this as a approved group discussion with willing participants. I would not force this conversation on anyone, because the last thing you would want is any youth to feel isolated, one, or ganged upon, two. But if this is presented as an open discussion, maybe I would even have like a youth retreat, maybe, this could be dynamic for a youth retreat. You have games there, you have food there, you watch some movies, you fellowship, and then you cover this book and you talk about real life issues. Because despite what we may imagine, youth, they know, even down to second graders, first graders, they know about different things. And I pick up my friend all the time. I say, if kids could come out the womb learning how to swipe left and right already, and then they're barely 2, they know life. They're never too young to know about life. So, yeah. And like I said about the book, so 8th grader poet, his name is Moses Jackson, learns his family structure will be changing, and his anger leads him to make a bad decision. That's what I was talking about. A lot of kids can't just say, "Oh, let me walk away," and especially if they're being bullied or tormented. And the last thing you want a youth to be bullied about is their race. But I've heard many stories about that, which is unfortunate. He is forced to move to a new school where he encounters racism for the first time. Yep, that happens to a lot of kids. You'll be surprised. Writing poetry helps Moses to cope. That's why I say a lot of youth, they're not just wasting time. You may pass by and see them writing poetry and thinking that they're just wasting time. This is how they cope. But the treatment from his teacher and classmates pushed him to the edge. And Moses must learn to love his new extended family and his Blackness. He also has to decide if he should speak up about his teacher, how his teacher treats him, at the risk of getting kicked out of school. Sorry for the long. Yeah, so basically he's on edge because if he speaks up, he'd get in trouble. Unfortunately, I've heard about this a lot of times. This right here, this situation is still very real. You wouldn't think it is because it's now 2023, but it sadly is still prevalent, for a kid to feel, no kid should ever feel like I'm gonna get in trouble for speaking up against the teacher because the teacher just called me something or said something derogatory. No kid should ever feel as if they have no voice. Or better yet, if this is happening to a youth that they should not feel as if they have no support anywhere. So whether you are a foster or adoptive parent, whether you took in an orphan, whether you are a mentor, an advocate, educator, whatever your role is for the gracefully chosen community, that's the foster, adoption, orphan, and underserved community, like you should, help be the change you want to see. We can't change everyone and everything, but we can try to be a positive light for those that's being affected by stuff like this. And not just racism. There's a lot of other things that go on, harassment, peer pressure, and just different stuff like that. So I would just talk to the youth that you are connected with, whether they're an extended family member. And it's not always a good thing to say, "Oh, well, I'm going to hit them before they can hit me. I'm going to get them before they get me." That's not always the best solution. Sometimes we need to get them somewhere. And this is off subject right now. If you're in the Midlands, if you have a male youth that you're connected with and you're just wanting extra support for them, I would connect with Big Homie, Little Homie. I talked about him before. He was in my 2020 season of Foster My Stories. Let me see if I can come up while I'm on here, right? If it lets me. Computer starts adding up. Okay, so it's BIGHOMIE is a local mentor that really meets the youth right where they are. I was, grateful to have had him on the podcast, but he's a phenomenal leader, community leader, and he mentors and counsels just groups of leaders and inspiring parents, whether it's foster, adoption, and he really a lot of the youth who's going through his program, especially male. I know males don't really always have the best role models, so his program has helped countless males that have gone through, whether from start to finish, even get to the point of graduation. A lot of times, especially in the underserved communities, a lot of youth don't really see that as obtainable, unfortunately, because of their situation. Oh, I was in foster care. Oh, I was adopted. Oh, I come from a single parent home. I would never be anything. And a lot of times we have to kind of be the positive voice of reason to kind of help progress them along the way, because it's so easy to get caught up, right? It's so easy to get caught up and hang with the wrong people, like in The Amazing Maurice. It's so easy to like think you have to get over and to get your next um, progress or to progress in life, as we probably saw in the Puss in Boots franchise or whatnot. Is or and then like we just saw with I Write Rhymes. You may feel like, man, I'm getting angry and I don't know what to do, and you're ready to fight, but you can't handle it that way. It's good to, what I'm saying in all this is, if a youth feels they have support, whether it might just be you're the support. If you're listening right now and you know a youth and you don't feel that there's nobody really there for them in their corner, why don't you step up and be that for them, like in a positive way? Of course, you can only do but so much, but why don't you be the change, or try to be the change you want to see? You never know, it could go a long way. And so once again, today's cast episode for the Relate to You segment dealt with the subject matter of orphans, and Puss in Boots and the Amazing Maurice touched on that scenario, whereas here with I Write Rhymes deals with the subject matter, the real subject matter of racism and how it's still rampant today. Um, and once again, like I said 5 times in this episode, I'm not expressing all of this because it's Black History Month. I celebrate Black 365 like Mr. Tom Joyner all day, every day. But I'm just expressing how a lot of times, you know, we're in circumstances and situations because we have to survive, or we're trying to fight for survival, or we're trying to cope with our circumstances and situations that can be hard. You know, him going into being, in an extended family, it may seem like it's a great thing. It may not always be a great thing, right? And then you're just trying to adjust. So I Write Rhymes helps him find his coping mechanism in a positive way, right? Positive way. And once again, if you're an advocate, a parent, aspiring to be a parent, aspiring to be a foster adopted, mentor or advocate, meet the youth right where they are. If you see them bopping their head all the time or singing, they're not wasting time. It may look that way. If you see them just on a basketball court, encourage them even with that. Whatever they're good at, help find the things that they're natural at, that they're good at. And maybe your voice will be the voice of reason where everybody else is saying no and what they can't do. Maybe your voice is what they need to hear to know that I can progress on. I can work hard. I could be the change I want to see. I could be the exception. I'm just saying. And so today, let's recap, right? Because I said a lot, didn't I? So the 2 movies I shared today with you on the Relate to You segment. And by the way, the Relate to You segment again is really a highlight of movies and public figures, books, and just product services that relates to you and your community. You don't have to have been raised or been in any of these circumstances surrounding these scenarios: foster, adoption, orphan, underserved. But maybe the content can encourage you as well, right where you are. So Puss in Boots touched on briefly the orphan storyline as it relates to Perito, right here, the comic relief, and Goldie from Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And then we got into the Amazing Maurice. Once again, how it didn't cover that whole movie, but it kind of more so highlighted like the effects of I was in this situation, now I'm reacting and being this type of way because of my situation. Whereas Puss in Boots had really an ultimate choice to make at the end that affected his future, right? And so then we got to Mr. Langston Hughes, who was raised in like a kinship care. And once again, Langston Hughes, phenomenal poet, playwright. If you've never heard of him, go look up his stuff. Please, please, please. Okay. Mr. Langston Hughes, he was like in a kinship care situation, raised by his grandmother. And once again, kinship care, the agencies now recognize if you are raising your siblings, that's a kinship care situation. Um, you can like get assistance from the state to help take care of them. Now, let me go ahead and say this because I cannot stress this enough. Don't go claiming your siblings or your taxes and all this foolishness I keep hearing. Just to get a write-off or extra income. It's not for that. If you are genuinely out here like you're helping to raise your siblings, them being with their mom, their dad, or whoever is not the best for them, and you don't want them to go into the foster care system because unfortunately the foster care system is not always the best choice. And even though I came from the foster care system, I'm an advocate for a lot of things to kind of like progress them outside of the foster care system. I'm just saying that. So if you feel your situation, your home or placement would be better for them, talk to a local agency, especially if you genuinely want to help. Don't do it because, I want an extra income in my household per month. And I'm getting passionate about that because I've been through that. So if you genuinely want to help your sibling and you genuinely want to contact your local agency, they will get with you. And like the process of going in foster care and adopting, you're going to go through the ringer, because they need to make sure you are the right fit, and they need to make sure that your home is the best situation for that individual or those individuals. So, all right, and like I said, Langston Hughes, he went from like a kinship care situation with his grandmother, then his who died, so that was almost like an orphan situation, and then he went back to siblings. So that was almost like, even though he went back to his mother and his siblings, yeah, there were his siblings, but that also was like a foster care transition as well, because for whatever reason he was able to stay with his mother. Well, he grew up and then moved on, that's right. He was always moving around. And so that's another thing. If a youth is not really stable, they're always moving. Like in my case, I moved constantly, not because I was bad or did anything wrong, but a lot of times I was moved around the system for safety reasons. Like before I was emancipated out at the age of 21, a lot of times if parents have lost parental rights, in order to protect you, they will kind of move you around because they want to keep your privacy intact. And once again, that was years ago with a capital Y. A lot of things have changed now. I'm hoping for the better as far as security. I'm not sure how things work now, but you can't just roll up and say, "Hey, I'm your aunt." It don't work that way no more. At least I hope not. You have to be approved, stamped, signed, sealed, and delivered. Okay, so yeah. But yeah, Mr. Langston Hughes, he kind of went through that in his earlier life, but all of that progressed him to be the dynamic poet we know of today, despite his circumstances. That's all I'm saying. In all these movies, Puss in Boots, The Amazing Maurice, and with Mr. Langston Hughes, and even down to I Write Rhymes, despite the circumstance, the situation, and whatever they found themselves in, it ultimately helped prepare them for a better future. They went through that stuff. Once again, you may know a youth that have gone through that stuff, somebody that's currently going through that stuff, and you want to be an encouragement, be the encouragement. If they have no one else, why not you? You can be the change you want to see. You can be the change you want to see. Once again, another great example, the mother to the son in Mr. Langston Hughes' poetry, Mother to Son. Let me go through it again. I love this poet. Well, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal step. It had tacks in it. and splinters and boards torn up. She had to go through some stuff, and places with no carpet on the floor, bare. But all the times I've been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn your back. Don't you sit down on the steps because you find it kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I still going, honey. I still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. You gotta tell a youth, somebody you know, boy, girl, whoever, keep going. Yes, it's going to get hard sometimes. Yes, I've been through the ringer. Don't be afraid to be transparent with them too, as appropriate, because a lot of times youth, that's why youth don't come to like leaders and people that they know, because they don't feel like they're approachable. They feel like they feel like all they're going to do is be judged because of whatever their situation is. Sometimes they need somebody to listen to them and not judge them and support them and not feel as if they don't want to come to you because you would turn your nose because they feel as if you feel like they're just wanting a handout. Sometimes the youth need you to meet them right where they are and tell them that, hey, you know what? I've been through some things too, but I want to encourage you that you can do it. You can make it. You got this. Sometimes they need to hear that. You got this. You got this. You got this. Tell that to somebody you got this. They hear all day, every day what they can't be, what they can't do, where they can't go. Why don't you be the exception and say, you got this? And especially since I'm on a tangent of saying you got this, right? I'm getting excited. Let me pull up some stuff that I want to show you as a snippet of what's to come. So, like I've been saying for the last, I don't know how long, there's some stuff in the works that I'm wanting to do for not just the foster care youth, but adoption, orphan, underserved, as far as also definitely for, I call it the chosen child. So Gracefully Chosen is one of my brands. And I call those associated with the foster, adoption, orphan, and underserved chosen. You are gracefully chosen. If you've ever been labeled foster, adopted, orphaned, or underserved, you are what I like to call gracefully chosen, right? Because you hear all day, every day, a label. Oh, I'm a foster child. Oh, I was adopted. Oh, well, I'm an orphan because I lost my parents. Oh, well, you're underserved. You only come from a single parent home. But that doesn't have to be your end-all, be-all. In other words, you're not the label because of life and circumstances and situations that's a lot of times beyond your control. You can, despite your circumstance, situations, and things that's beyond control, still be the exception to go on and do greatness and be great despite all of that. And once again, Puss in Boots, the amazing Maurice, Mr. Langston Hughes, the mother to the son, and I Write Rhymes helps kind of propel you in those directions of you can do this, you got this. And I can't stress enough, Mr. Langston Hughes, go check out his stuff. He talks about real life. He was living in the 20s through the 60s, so he went through some stuff. And as we heard in his autobiography, his father left because of racism, and to the point where he just left the family. Which is sad, but it happened on a regular basis all day, every day, 24/7, 365. But despite all of that, what can we do? How can we be the change, the exception we want to see? We don't have to, because of our circumstances and situations, feel as if we have to be limited because of those things, right? We don't have to be limited because of that stuff. I know it's not easy, right? I know life happens and, you just want somebody to just get it. You just want somebody to get it. I get it. I definitely understand. It's not easy. But we do have to stay encouraged. And I'm hoping that whoever may be listening, I don't know your story, but if you are an advocate, a mentor, if you're an educator, if you are an aspiring foster parent or adoptive parent or work with orphans or help the underserved community, the best thing you could do is to pour life into those you desire to serve and to help, right? Because they hear all day, every day of what they can't do and what they can't be and why they're not. But you could be the voice that helps tell them why they are. Okay, so as you know, well, before I can share what I'm about to share, um, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy Saturday. I got some stuff I'm going to be doing the rest of this day, but this is the Relate to You segment as part of the Foster My Stories podcast. And I'm super thankful that you have taken the time to just, hang out with me and hear me, go off on a tangent about some stuff. But it's good tangents, right? It's all because I've been there with a lot of that I'm talking about. I've experienced it. I know all too well, the emotions and the things that happen to the youth that are affected by these things. And we just want to be the change. We just want to be the change we want to see. I hope you feel the same way, right? Be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. Be the change. Okay, I'm not going to start singing. uh, I could if you want me to, but now I can do it. All right, so I'm getting this together for you right now. And like I said, I got quite a few things on the way in the works that I'm super excited. I'm like a little kid right now that I'm just so thankful. And I'm gonna tell y'all this has been a long journey. Like this during that I had to do these things I'm working on now, paired with the podcast, it didn't just happen overnight. I've been stirred to do these things for years now. When I say back in 2016, 17, to the point where it just propelled me to like go get some more education and get my MBA and then now create these things. I'm telling you, it's been a journey, but I'm thankful for the journey and the stirrings to the point where it's like, man, I see it's coming together bit by bit by bit by bit. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. I'm very thankful. And so, let me see what I can do, right? Let me see, can I share what I'm about to share? Possibly. All right, let's see. I'm gonna try my best. If it lets me, I'm gonna see if it lets me. Sometimes stuff, I don't know. So what I'm doing right now is pulling up some stuff for you. So I appreciate your patience. I may have to go to another screen because I'm not sure if it's going to let me do it the way I'm trying to do it. But I'm going to try my best. Yeah, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It ain't been no crystal stair. Never had anything handed to me. But that's okay. I never had it easy. That's okay too. Never had a handout like that. I mean, but I've seen favor. Like God's good. I've seen favor in a lot of things where I necessarily shouldn't have gotten favor for. But now I realize my situation and your situation is never meant to be like the status quo. Never meant to be like statistics. Never meant to be just normal. Right? We are beautifully and wonderfully made despite circumstances and situations that keep us falling into statistics. And even if you do fall into statistics, who cares, right? You still got purpose. You still got greatness. You still have a life. You still are somebody. And all that other stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to have to share it a different way. And that's okay. So while I'm pulling this up, oh, excuse me. Science is trying to get me. It's okay. There we go. So what I'm pulling up right now is stuff to pair with my Chosen Child brand, Gracefully Chosen. Super excited about that. All right. And I'm going to share with you some promo stuff. So basically what I'm doing is I'm pulling up some promotional stuff for the Chosen Child store. And I'm hoping to launch it officially on February 25th, which is the last Saturday of this month. But so we understand that, okay, I know, oh my gosh, Valentine's Day is right around the corner. Oh my gosh. But you know what? There's kids out here that need to feel loved despite their situation, because there's some people that's single, they still need love too. But also maybe gifting somebody as a Valentine, that's not a typical Valentine. Maybe you need to tell a youth that's gracefully chosen, like you're loved, you're cared for, we got you as well. And so the Chosen Child store wants to do just that. Want to meet the youth right where they are, meet a foster parent, adoptive parent right where they are. Also celebrate social workers and court advocates right where they are. So here where I'm at in South Carolina, we call them guardian ad litems, and those are the people who go to court, really kind of like advocate for the youth. It's called CASA where I'm at. I'm not sure what it's called where you are, but yeah, those are the people that kind of all day, every day go to work for you, whether as a mentor or advocate or a really like a parent, foster, adopted, orphan, underserved. Is I want to celebrate them in the Chosen Child store. So you have a chosen child, you have a chosen teen, and you have a chosen parent, and you have a chosen worker, social court advocate. I want to celebrate all of you. So, and to do so, I am going to show you what I've been working on. These, once again, these are just promos. Now, even though the store is looking to launch like officially February 25th, if you are wanting something custom made before then or anything, or want to actually kind of get something or interested in getting something, please hit me up in inbox. We could talk and go from there. What's going to be in the store, going to some digital designs, some wall art, hopefully some stuff for traveling. I know a lot of times youth, they need to people to travel, and especially when you're going between foster homes or have to go to stay with a respite home provider, and that's the person who's temporary before the child goes to foster care. A lot of times these youth are just giving like garbage bags to put their stuff in. Well, I want to give them a custom made bag that they can feel proud of despite their situation where they have to up and move, up and leave, right? And that's in the works as well. So not just that, right? So let me get into it. Let me go back to this part right here as well. Appreciate your patience. Like I have this downloaded, but I have to show it to you on the screen because of how I'm sharing this information with you. So I definitely appreciate your patience. All right. And so as I'm pulling this stuff up, I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. I will be able to see it and read it back or answer it as best as possible. If you have any questions pertaining to orphans, kinship care, foster care, adoption, anything I've talked about on this segment today, any of the movies, the Puss in Boots, the Amazing Maurice, if you want more information about Nadine Johnson's I Write Rhymes or anything like that, hit me up as well. And I will do my best to give you as much information as I can, right, on that subject matter. And also, let me express this. I'm also connected to other leaders on different subject matters as well. So if you know somebody that deals with trauma, PTSD, especially as it relates to foster and adoption and orphan underserved communities, let me know, and I would love to connect you with them. These people are leaders of what they do, and they have past related to these communities, but they have gone on to do some phenomenal things, and they are doing some phenomenal things. Like last year, I had just really the privilege of interviewing Miss Southwest 2022. Excuse me. Miss Cheryl Williams, who is doing phenomenal. She's traveling right now. She is in the running for Miss World pageant, and she has a billboard right there in Times Square going on right now. And this lady, she was in foster care. She went through trauma, and she's doing phenomenal things. Mr. Danny Van, please uplift him in your prayers. He is a phenomenal youth mentor. He really helps those who's aging out of the foster care system, and he really has a heart for the youth. And he's going through some medical heart surgeries and stuff, recoveries right now. So I'm asking if you could just, put him on your prayer list as well. Touch and agree with me on that. And of course, we know God got him. But he's a phenomenal leader in what he do. Our mentor, Dr. John DeGarmo, is always phenomenal, traveling, advocating. He's always on TED Talk, always giving his expertise. So if you are aspiring to be a foster adoption parent, or underserved orphans or whatnot, and you want like real like training classes or just training or advice, I would reach out to him. Dr. John DeGarmo can be found on Facebook. And he also has an institute, the Dr. John DeGarmo Foster Care Institute. You go to his web page and kind of get that information as well. And give me a moment as I'm talking, right? I'm talking and trying to get to myself at the same time. Yeah, so many dynamic leaders. Mandy Lemon, who I have yet to interview. I can't wait when I do get a chance to interview her. I'm super excited. But she is, just phenomenal as far as she knows trauma and PTSD. She's a foster adoptive mom. She's dealt with foster care in her past. A lot of the people that I'm associated with, they're phenomenal leaders. And okay, I'm rambling, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say, right? Okay, cool. All right, let me close this out. And I appreciate your patience. I'm just kind of getting things ready for you. And I got to see if it'll let me share it. That's another thing, because the way I wanted to share it, it's not going to let me just do it like that, which is okay. All right, so let's get into it. First tab. So I'm doing chosen teen and chosen child journals. Also going to be doing chosen worker journals. And so for the chosen child, teen, worker, parent, it's going to be journals to kind of support you in where you are. This right here is an example of a chosen teen journal. 3 sections. Why am I chosen? And I kind of give some encouragement there. A place where they could talk about themselves. A place, dedicated for their caseworkers, and some information about them getting to know their family. Section 2 gives them like their plan for the month, some to-do stuff for the month, and some journaling pages, along with a gratitude section for some lessons and things they may have learned throughout the month. Section 3 deals with contacts, passwords, special occasions, and hopefully their plans for the future, right? Because we want to tell each chosen child, teen, worker, parent, advocate that, hey, you got this. You got greatness and you have purpose. Next up, and once again, these are promotionals. If you have any questions, stuff is on the way. The store is on the way. Give me a moment. All right, excuse me. So yeah, here we go. Wall art. I'm a chosen teen. Got some wall art. That's just one of the examples of the many that we could do. Once again, the store is not looking to launch until maybe the 25th of this month. I'm shooting for that. But if you want anything custom made before then, like I said, I know Valentine's coming up. Maybe you want to gift a chosen teen or a child something special to them. Or when the store launches, you can definitely always, for birthdays, celebrations, just because gift them, whether it's a chosen child, whether it's a chosen worker, social or core advocate, whether it's a chosen parent, foster adoption, right where they are. So here we go. I'm a chosen child foster parent, and this is just one of many things. And then I'm a chosen child. Hey, give that person some love and support. You give them a tumbler, reflective of really meeting them right where they are, maybe a phone case. But these are just a few of some more examples to come. These are just some examples. Once again, this is just a snippet of the Chosen Child store. If you are wanting anything custom made before the launch or whatnot, looking at, once again, the 25th of February, possibly, feel free to, hit me up, and I will be able to work with you to get that to you and go from there. But once again, this is just a snippet and a taste of before the launch of meeting the chosen child, the chosen teen, the chosen parent, and the chosen worker right where they are, to tell them, hey, I see you. I got you. And here you go. All right. Well, this has been a phenomenal day. I'm super excited to have hung out with you today on Foster My Stories. Once again, I'm your host, Shalene Michelle Tate. Thank you for letting me expound on the Orphan Storyline in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the amazing Maurice, Mr. Langston Hughes, along with his mother to son poetry that I read, and I write rhymes dealing with that circumstance and scenario, along with kind of giving you a snippet into the Chosen Child store, which is soon to launch, hopefully on the 25th. If you have any questions, if you need any support or anything, let me know and we'll go from there. All right. But without taking the rest of your day, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. And remember, as always, on this podcast, the gracefully chosen communities, whether you're foster, adopted, orphan, or underserved, you're gracefully chosen. Thank you so much for tuning in to Foster My Stories. And I look forward to hanging with you next week. And if you don't know the schedule, let me go back to it for you really quick. That way you know what's going on. So like I said, I made, the new times for the episodes are around 12 o'clock on Saturdays and moved from Wednesdays. I used to do it from Wednesdays at 3 p.m. But now Saturdays, and I'll try my best by 12, maybe 12:15, 12:30 at the latest. Once again, because when you're working with multiple windows and technologies, sometimes stuff can be kind of slow. But I thank you for your patience. And as always, this stuff is going to be on replay for you. So here's the calendar. If you're on the Foster My Story Plus page, the Foster My or Gracefully, the podcast page, excuse me. The Foster My Stories podcast page, the Foster My Story Plus page, or Author Shalene Michelle Tate page, you'll see a calendar that looks just like this. We already did the December-January recap, which is on replay, whatever page you're watching on. Then today was to relate to you. Next week, we are going into a community review for the Bear Foundation. It's a local organization here in South Carolina that's similar to Epworth Children's Home, or phenomenal service. So I'm going to be touching on them. And then the 25th, we'll be going into some upcoming just stuff. And also that happens to be the launch of the Chosen Child store, the 25th, right? All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. And thank you, as always, for being gracefully chosen. You take care.